My mother-in-law refused to speak at my wedding. Not one word, not a toast, not a blessing, not even a single congratulations. She sat in the second row, in a gray dress that looked like mourning clothes, with her arms crossed so tight the fabric bunched around her elbows, and her jaw locked so hard I could see the muscles in her neck twitching like angry snakes. When the pastor asked if anyone objected, she didn't speak. But she didn't have to. Her silence was louder than any objection could ever be. The whole room felt it. My mother squeezed my hand so hard I felt her rings dig into my skin. My father cleared his throat loudly, trying to break the tension. Daniel, my husband-to-be, looked at her with pleading eyes, eyes that said, "Mom, please, just this once." She just stared straight ahead, like she was at a funeral, like she was watching her son walk into a trap. And then, after the ceremony, when people came up to congratulate us, she stood in the corner by the punch bowl like a statue. She didn't move, she didn't smile. One of her friends, Margaret, went over to her and asked, "Aren't you proud of your son, Patricia? He looks so happy." Patricia took a long, slow sip of her drink, stared at me from across the room, and said in a voice loud enough for half the guests to hear, "He made a mistake. A big one. I'm just waiting for him to realize it." Then she set her glass down, grabbed her purse and walked out of the reception hall without saying goodbye to anyone. Not to Daniel. Not to me. Not to my family. She just left. What would you do if your mother-in-law called your wedding a mistake in front of everyone you loved? Would you cry? Would you scream? Would you never speak to her again? 5 years. That's how long Patricia went without speaking to me, not a single word, not a text message, not even a nod in my direction at forced family gatherings. 5 Thanksgivings where she sat at the opposite end of the table and pretended I was invisible. 5 Christmases where she handed Daniel a gift and, accidentally, forgot mine. 5 birthdays where she called Daniel to sing happy birthday, but hung up before I could even say hello. I'd watch her interact with others, her sister, her friends, the cashier at the grocery store, and she'd be warm, almost charming. She'd smile, she'd laugh, she'd touch people's arms when she talked. But when she looked at me, her face would go blank. Like I was a piece of furniture she'd never bothered to learn the name of. Daniel would visit her alone, every other Sunday. He'd come back with apologetic eyes and a sad shrug of his shoulders. "She's old," he'd say. "She's set in her ways. She doesn't mean it personally." But she did. She meant every bit of it. She blamed me for taking her son away. She blamed me for not being the kind of woman she'd hoped for. She blamed me for not being rich, or connected, or from the right neighborhood. She blamed me for existing in the same universe as her precious Daniel. I don't know what she wanted for him. A doctor? A lawyer? A socialite with a trust fund and a pedigree and a summer house in the Hamptons? I was just a girl from a middle-class family who worked as a graphic designer, made Daniel laugh, and loved him with every broken piece of my heart. I thought that was enough. For Patricia, it was never enough, and she made sure I knew it. I met Daniel when I was 24. I'd just moved to the city after graduating college. I was working in an office building downtown in the marketing department, living off ramen noodles and sheer stubbornness. He worked in finance on the 15th floor. We met at the coffee cart on the 3rd floor. I was spilling creamer all over my new white blouse, the only expensive thing I owned. He handed me a napkin. We talked for 10 minutes about nothing and everything. He asked me out. I said yes before he finished the sentence. 6 months later, he proposed in Central Park, on a wooden bench that overlooked the lake. He told me he'd been sitting on that bench for 5 years, eating his lunch, imagining the person he'd eventually share it with. He said he'd been imagining me the whole time, even before he met me. I said yes. I said yes without hesitation. I said yes because he was the kindest man I'd ever met, because he made me feel seen, because he looked at me the way I'd always dreamed someone would look at me, like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. And then I met Patricia. It was a Sunday afternoon in April. I remember because the flowers in her garden were blooming. She opened the door and looked at me for a full 5 seconds without saying a word. Then she looked me up and down, my secondhand shoes, my slightly wrinkled dress, my nervous smile, and said, "Daniel, can I speak to you in the kitchen?" They were in there for 25 minutes. I sat on her stiff floral couch, staring at her family photos on the wall, feeling my heart hammer against my ribs. I heard her voice through the plaster. Not the words, but the tone. Sharp, angry, disappointed. When they came back out, Daniel's eyes were red and swollen. Patricia's face was a mask of forced politeness, like someone who'd just swallowed poison and was trying not to show it. She said, "Welcome to the family, I suppose." And that was it. That was the warmest she ever got. No handshake, no hug, no, "I'm so happy to meet you." Just that one sentence, dripping with resentment. She refused to help with the wedding. Every time I'd call to ask for her opinion on flowers or cakes or seating arrangements, she'd say she was too tired or too busy or not feeling well. She never RSVP'd until a week before the ceremony. When she finally confirmed, she added a note. "I'll be there, but don't expect me to pretend I'm happy about it." The day of the wedding, she arrived late. The ceremony was already starting as she shuffled into the back row. She wore that gray dress, the one that looked like she was going to a funeral, not a wedding. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun. Her face was stone. She didn't look at me once during the vows. She looked at Daniel. Her eyes were sad, like she was watching him make the worst mistake of his life. And then there was the gift. A small box, neatly wrapped in silver paper. I opened it the day after the wedding, thinking maybe, just maybe, she'd given me something meaningful. Something that said, "I accept you." I unfolded the tissue paper and found a set of silver spoons, 8 of them, with an engraved card that read, "For when you need to eat your words." I stared at that card for a long time. Then I put the spoons in my kitchen drawer. I still use them every single day, not because I like them, because they remind me that even the sharpest words can be outlived, that even the coldest silences can be broken. The first year of marriage was the hardest. Patricia would call Daniel every single night at exactly 8 p.m. I'd hear her voice through the wall, low and insistent. She'd ask about his health, his work, his happiness. She never asked about me. Not once. Not even a casual, "And how's Clara doing?" She'd send him care packages filled with his favorite snacks, peanut butter pretzels, dark chocolate, dried mangoes. Nothing for me. She'd text him photos of the house where he grew up, captioned, "Remember when this was your home?" It was a knife, and she twisted it every single day. Daniel defended her. Not with passion, with guilt. He'd say, "She raised me alone. My dad left when I was 11. She worked double shifts at the hospital. She slept on a pull-out couch so I could have my own room. She sacrificed everything for me. I can't just cut her off." I understood. I really did. My own mother had died when I was 13, and my father had remarried a woman who made me feel like a ghost in my own home. I knew what it was like to cling to family, even when they hurt you, even when they made you invisible. So I smiled. I smiled at every family dinner where Patricia ignored me. I smiled at every holiday where she'd hand Daniel a gift and claim she forgot to bring one for me. I smiled when she told my sister-in-law that I was a phase that would pass eventually. I smiled when I overheard her on the phone with her sister saying, "She's not good enough for him. She never will be." I smiled and smiled and smiled until my cheeks ached, but I never broke. I refused to break. Then came the phone call. It was a Thursday. Rain was pounding against the windows. I was at work, half asleep, staring at a spreadsheet of marketing data. Daniel's number flashed on my phone. He never called during work hours. My stomach dropped into my shoes. "It's my mom," he said. His voice was shaking. "She collapsed. She's in the hospital. They think it's a stroke. They don't know how bad yet. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my bag and left without telling my boss. I drove to the hospital in the pouring rain, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I found Daniel in the waiting room on the third floor. His face was buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking. He was crying. I sat down next to him. I put my arm around him. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. The doctors came out an hour later. It was a stroke. A bad one. She was stable now, but she'd lost most of her ability to speak. She could understand everything. The doctors were sure of that. But the words came out wrong. Gibberish. Sounds. Frustration. The right side of her body was paralyzed. She'd need months of physical therapy. Maybe years. Maybe forever. Daniel visited her once. Just once. He sat in the chair next to her bed and tried to talk. She couldn't respond. She just stared at him with terrified, confused eyes. She couldn't say his name. She couldn't say anything at all. He left after 15 minutes. He said he couldn't handle it. He said it was too painful. He said he'd go back tomorrow. But tomorrow came, and he didn't go. And the next day, and the next. I went back the next day, and the next, and the next, and the next. I didn't plan to. I didn't sit down and think, I'm going to forgive this woman who treated me like garbage for 5 years. I didn't make a conscious decision. I just went. I packed a canvas bag with a book, a water bottle, some snacks, and my phone charger. I told Daniel I was going to visit his mother. He looked at me like I'd grown a second head, like I'd just suggested we adopt a crocodile. Why? He said. His voice was flat, confused. She's been horrible to you. For years. She never even says your name. I shrugged. Because she's your mother. Because she's alone. Because no one else is going. He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly, his eyes wet. I think he was relieved. I think he wanted someone to carry the weight he couldn't carry himself. So I carried it. I carried it every single day. I'd arrive at 9 a.m. sharp. The nurses knew me by name. They'd wave as I walked past the station. I'd pull up a chair next to Patricia's bed, the same green plastic chair that squeaked when I shifted my weight. I'd say, "Good morning, Patricia. It's me, Clara. I brought you tea. The kind you like. Earl Grey, with a little honey." I'd set the cup on her bedside table. She'd glare at me. Her eyes were furious. She was terrified, trapped inside a body that wouldn't cooperate, surrounded by machines that beeped and tubes that dripped. She'd glare at me like I was the cause of all her pain. I didn't blame her. She'd spent 5 years hating me. One stroke wasn't going to undo that. Her eyes would dart around the room, searching for someone else. Anyone else. A nurse. A doctor. Her sister. Her friends. Daniel. But there was no one. Her sister Margaret came once. She walked in, saw Patricia in the bed, gasped, stayed for exactly 10 minutes, patted her hand and said, "I'll come back next week, I promise." She never came back. Not once. Her friends sent flowers, 2 bouquets, one from her book club, one from her church group. No visits, no phone calls. Daniel, my husband, came twice more, but each time he left earlier than the last. 15 minutes, then 12, then 8. He couldn't take the silence. He couldn't take seeing his strong, controlling, intimidating mother reduced to a trembling mess of blankets and tubes and confused sounds. But I stayed. I stayed for 3 months. I talked to her constantly. Not about anything important. I'd talk about the weather, how the rain had finally stopped, how the sun was coming out, how the cherry blossoms were starting to bloom. I'd talk about my garden, how the tomatoes were growing, how the basil needed more water, how the roses were covered in aphids. I'd talk about Lily, our 4-year-old daughter, who Patricia had only met twice. Twice in her entire life. I'd tell her stories about Lily's dance recitals, where she'd spun in circles and fallen over giggling. I'd tell her about Lily's obsession with frogs, how she'd collect them from the backyard and try to keep them in shoeboxes. I'd tell her about the way Lily pronounced spaghetti as baschetti, and how she refused to eat anything that wasn't shaped like a dinosaur. I'd show her photos on my phone, scrolling through images of Lily's gap-toothed smile, her messy pigtails, her hands covered in paint. Patricia would look away. She'd close her eyes. She'd pretend to sleep. But I knew she was listening. I could see her breathing change. I could see her fingers twitch. She was listening. She just didn't want to admit it. In the second month, something shifted. I came in one morning and she was crying. Silent tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks, soaking into her pillow. Her jaw was trembling. She couldn't even wipe them away because her right arm was useless. I pulled up the chair and asked, "What's wrong, Patricia? Are you in pain?" She shook her head, a small, frantic motion. Then she grabbed my wrist with her left hand. Her grip was weak but desperate. Her eyes were screaming something I couldn't understand. She tried to speak, but the words came out wrong. Just noises. Frustrated, guttural sounds. She was furious. She was broken. I held her hand. "It's okay," I said softly. "You don't have to talk. I'm not going anywhere." She cried harder. Her whole body shook. I sat there, holding her hand, listening to the steady beep of the heart monitor and the distant sound of hospital carts rolling down the hallway. I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt present. Like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Like all those years of silence and cruelty had been leading to this exact moment. In the third month, her speech started improving. She could form simple sentences now. Water. Pain. Cold. Help. She could ask for things. She could communicate her needs. But she still couldn't say my name. She'd try, but it would come out wrong every time. Kara? Laura? Sarah? Claire? I didn't correct her. I just said, "I'm here. It's me." And she'd nod, frustrated, and look away. Then one day, something changed. It was a Tuesday. Rainy again. I'd brought her a fresh cup of tea and a copy of the newspaper. I was telling her about a recipe I'd tried the night before, a lemon chicken dish that came out too salty. She was staring at me, not glaring, just staring, like she was really seeing me for the first time. Then she grabbed my wrist. Harder than before. Her fingers dug into my skin. Her eyes were clear and focused. She took a breath, exhaled, forced the words out one by one. "Why?" I froze. "What?" She took another breath. Her voice was raspy, weak, but determined. "Why are you here?" I sat back in my chair. I looked at her. This woman who'd spent 5 years pretending I didn't exist, who'd called me a mistake, who'd refused to speak at my wedding, who'd sent me a set of silver spoons with a card that said, "Eat your words." I thought about all the reasons I could give. Because it's the right thing to do. Because Daniel asked me to. Because I'm a good person. Because I want to prove you wrong. Because I want to see you suffer. But none of those were true. So I said the only thing that was true. The only thing that made any sense. Because you're still family. Even when you don't act like it. Patricia stared at me. Her eyes were wide. Her mouth opened and closed. Her hand was still wrapped around my wrist. For a long moment, I thought she was going to say something cruel. Something sharp. Something that would remind me exactly why I'd spent 5 years being invisible, why I'd swallowed every insult, why I'd smiled through every silent holiday. Instead, she started crying. Not silent tears this time, real crying, the kind that shakes your whole body, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and ancient and broken. She pulled my hand to her chest and held it there, clutched against the hospital gown, like it was the only thing keeping her from drowning. She sobbed. Her shoulders heaved. Her breath came in ragged gasps. I didn't pull away. I let her hold me. I let her cry. I let her be completely, totally broken in front of me, because that's what you do for family. Not because they've earned it. not because they deserve it, because they need it. That moment changed everything. I don't know if it was gratitude or desperation or just the sheer exhaustion of carrying hate for so many years, but Patricia started trying. She'd ask me about Lily. She'd ask about Daniel. She'd ask about my work, my hobbies, my favorite coffee shop, the color of my new couch. She'd listen. She'd nod. Sometimes she'd even smile. Small, fragile smiles that faded as quickly as they came, but they were there. It was small. It was fragile. But it was real. When Patricia was finally discharged from the hospital, she couldn't go back to her house. It had stairs. Stairs everywhere. To the front door. To the bathroom. To the bedroom. Her sister refused to take her in. "I don't have the space," she said. "I don't have the time." Daniel was too overwhelmed to even talk about it. He just sat at the kitchen table staring at the wall, his hands shaking. So I asked Patricia to come live with us. I'll never forget her face when I asked. We were in the hospital room, the morning of her discharge. A nurse was packing her things into a plastic bag. Patricia was sitting in a wheelchair, her right arm draped uselessly in her lap. I knelt down in front of her so we were eye level. "Patricia," I said, "I want you to come live with us. Me, Daniel, and Lily. We have a spare room on the first floor. It's small, but it's warm. I can put a bed in there. I'll take care of you." She stared at me. Her eyes were red, swollen from crying. "You want me in your house?" Her voice cracked. "After everything I did?" "Yes. But I was horrible to you. I was horrible for years. I never said your name. I never treated you like family. I called you a mistake at your own wedding." I nodded. "You did. All of that is true." "Why would you do this?" she whispered. "Why would you want me in your home?" I thought about it for a moment. I could have given her the easy answer. Because I'm a good person. Because I want to prove I'm better than you. Because I want to make you feel guilty. Instead, I gave her the truth. Because I don't want to be the kind of person who walks away, I said. "You taught me that family isn't always perfect. You taught me that silence can be cruel. You taught me that words can cut deeper than any knife. And maybe you didn't mean to teach me those things. But you did. And now I want to teach you something too." "What?" she said, her voice barely a whisper. "That it's never too late to change. That you can spend 5 years being wrong and still have time to be right. That you can break someone's heart and still have a chance to heal it. I'm giving you that chance. You don't have to take it. But it's yours." She started crying again. She grabbed my hand with her left hand and squeezed. She didn't say anything. But she nodded. She nodded and cried and squeezed my hand like I was the only thing keeping her tethered to the earth. The first month living with us was awkward. So awkward. Patricia stayed in her room most of the time. She'd come out for meals but barely speak. She'd sit at the table with her eyes down, picking at her food, like she was waiting for someone to yell at her. I didn't push. I didn't demand. I'd leave her tea in the morning on a small tray outside her door. I'd ask if she needed anything when I passed her room. I'd tell her about my day, even if she didn't ask. The mail came. There was a bill. "I'm going to the store. Do you need anything?" She'd shake her head. She'd look away. But sometimes, just sometimes, I'd see her listening. I'd catch her watching me from the corner of her eye. She was trying. In her own broken, stumbling way, she was trying. Lily was the bridge. Lily didn't understand the history. She was 4 years old. She just knew that Grandma was sick, that Grandma lived with us now, and that Grandma needed extra love. Every morning, Lily would knock on Patricia's door and yell, "Good morning, Grandma. Do you want to see my drawings?" She'd crawl onto Patricia's bed with a stack of crayon drawings and spread them out on the blankets. She'd explain each one in excruciating detail. "This is a unicorn. This is a cat. This is a cat riding a unicorn. Do you like it?" Patricia would stare at the drawings. At first, she didn't respond. She just looked at them with empty eyes. But Lily didn't care. She just kept talking. This is my favorite color. What's your favorite color? Mine is pink. Do you like pink? Why don't you like pink? Pink is the best color. Do you want me to draw you a pink unicorn? One day, Patricia finally responded. She pointed to a drawing of a frog and said, "What is that?" Lily gasped. "It's a frog. His name is Mr. Hoppy. He lives in the backyard. He eats bugs. Do you want to meet him?" Patricia almost smiled. Almost. Her lips twitched. And she said, "Maybe later." I was standing in the doorway. I didn't say anything. I just let them have that moment. Because it was theirs. And I knew it was the beginning of something. Patricia started working with a home health aide 3 times a week. She'd do physical therapy exercises, trying to lift her right arm, trying to move her right leg, trying to pick up small objects with her left hand. It was hard. So hard. She'd get frustrated. She'd cry. She'd throw pillows across the room. But she kept trying. I'd bring her water. I'd tell her she was doing amazing. She'd laugh bitterly and say, "You're lying." But she'd keep going. One evening, about 4 months after she moved in, I was in the kitchen cooking dinner, stirring a pot of soup, chopping vegetables, singing along to the radio. Patricia was in the living room with Lily, looking at a picture book. Then I heard her voice call me from the other room. It was clear. Stronger than I'd heard it in months. "Clara." I froze. My hand stopped stirring. She'd never said my name before. Not once. Not in 5 years. Not in the hospital. Not here. I thought I'd imagined it. But then she called again. "Clara, can you come here?" I walked into the living room. She was sitting on the couch. Lily was on her lap, her little legs dangling over the side. Patricia looked up at me. Her eyes were red, her lips trembling, her hands were shaking. "Clara," she said again, like she was tasting the name, like she wanted to make sure it was real. "I need to tell you something." I sat down on the coffee table across from her. "I'm listening." She took a deep breath. Then another. She stared at her hands. Then she looked up at me. Her eyes were full of tears. "I was wrong," she said. "About everything. About you. About your wedding. About the person you are. I was so wrong." She paused. I didn't interrupt. "I thought I was protecting Daniel," she continued. "I thought I was protecting myself. I thought if I let you in, I'd lose him. I'd be replaced. I'd be forgotten. I was so scared. So scared of being alone. And I took that fear out on you. Every single day. For 5 years." Her voice broke. She wiped her eyes with her good hand. "All those years, I was so focused on what I was losing that I didn't see what I was gaining. You, Lily, a real family." She started crying. "And you still came. You came to the hospital. You came to my room. You came every single day. You held my hand. You brought me tea. You talked to me even when I couldn't talk back. You didn't have to. I didn't deserve it. I didn't deserve any of it. But you came anyway." I reached over and took her hand. Her fingers were cold, trembling. "I told you," I said softly. "You're family, even when you don't act like it." She squeezed my hand. "I love you," she said. "I know I haven't said it. I know I didn't say it at your wedding. I know I've never said it. But I love you. You're my daughter. You're the daughter I never had. And I wish, God, I wish, I'd known that years ago." I cried. I'm not proud of it. I cried like a baby. All those years of swallowing insults, of smiling through pain, of showing up anyway. It all came pouring out in that one moment. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. And Patricia cried too. And Lily wrapped her little arms around both of us and said, "Why is everyone crying? Is it happy crying? I don't like sad crying." I laughed through my tears. "It's happy crying, baby. Very happy." Then Patricia did something I truly didn't expect. She reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a small velvet box. It was old. The velvet was faded, rubbed thin in places. She handed it to me with shaking hands. "I was going to give you this at the wedding," she said. "I had it in my purse. It was in my hand. I was going to walk up to you and give it to you and tell you that you belonged. But I didn't. I was too stubborn, too proud, too scared." She closed her eyes. "I'm so sorry." I opened the box. Inside was a gold necklace with a tiny heart pendant. It was delicate, simple, beautiful. "Daniel's grandmother gave it to me," Patricia said. "It's been in the family for 3 generations. It's not worth much money, but it means everything to me. I wanted you to have it. I wanted to tell you that you belong, that you always belonged. I was just too blind to see it." She put the necklace in my hand. It was warm from being in her pocket. It felt heavier than it looked. "You can say no," she said. "You can throw it away. You can sell it. I wouldn't blame you. I wouldn't blame you for any of it." I took the necklace and clasped it around my neck. The tiny heart rested against my collarbone. I touched it with my fingers. "I'm not going to throw it away," I said. "I'm going to wear it every single day, and every time I touch it, I'm going to remember that you finally said my name, that you finally saw me, that you finally let me in." We hugged. A real hug. The kind where you hold on and don't let go. Lily climbed into the middle and made it a group hug. Patricia laughed. A real laugh. The kind I'd never heard from her before. That night, I put Lily to bed and came back to the living room. Patricia was still there, sitting on the couch, staring at the wall. I sat down next to her. "Can I ask you something?" I said. She nodded. "All those years. Why? Why did you hate me so much? What did I ever do to you?" She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You didn't do anything. That was the problem. You were perfect. You were kind. You were patient. You loved Daniel in a way I never could. And that scared me. Because if you were perfect, then what was I? What was I if I wasn't needed? If I wasn't the most important person in his life?" I didn't have an answer for that. So I just sat with her. The years after that were different. Not perfect. Not a fairy tale. Patricia still had bad days. She'd get frustrated with her body. She'd snap at me. She'd make passive-aggressive comments about the way I folded laundry or the way I cooked rice. But I snapped back. I didn't let her walk all over me. I'd say, "That's not how we talk to each other now." And she'd apologize. She'd actually apologize. "You're right. I'm sorry. That was the old me. I'm trying to be the new me." She started spending more time with Lily. She'd read her bedtime stories, her voice slow and halting but determined. She'd teach her how to bake cookies, measuring flour with her left hand. She'd come to her school plays and sit in the front row, clapping as loud as her weak hand could manage. She'd cry at every performance. "She's just so talented," she'd say. "She gets it from me, obviously." She started talking about the wedding, the one she'd refused to speak at. She'd say, "I wish I'd made a toast. I wish I'd told everyone how lucky Daniel was." She'd say, "I wish I'd worn a different color. Gray was such a terrible choice." She'd say, "I wish I'd hugged you. Why didn't I just hug you?" I'd tell her, "You're hugging me now. That's all that matters." Last Christmas, Patricia asked if she could make a toast. We were all sitting around the dinner table. Me, Daniel, Lily, my sister-in-law, her husband, a few cousins. Patricia raised her glass with her good hand. Her other hand was resting on the table, still weak, but slowly improving. "I want to say something," she said. "I didn't say it 5 years ago. I didn't say it for 5 years after that. But I'm saying it now." She looked at me. Her eyes were steady. "Clara," she said. "Thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for staying. Thank you for teaching me that family isn't about blood. It's about who stays when it's easier to leave. It's about who holds your hand in the hospital when no one else will. It's about who brings you tea even when you've never said their name. She raised her glass higher. To my daughter-in-law. My daughter. The best thing that ever happened to my son. And the best thing that ever happened to me. We all raised our glasses. I was crying. So was Daniel. So was Lily, even though she didn't fully understand. Patricia was crying too, but she was smiling. In that moment, I realized something important. Something I'd been learning for the past 2 years, piece by piece, day by day. It wasn't about proving her wrong. It wasn't about winning. It wasn't about revenge or justice or punishment. It was about showing up, every single day, even when it was hard, even when it was unfair, even when she didn't deserve it. Because love isn't a reward, it's a choice. And I chose her, even when she didn't choose me. You don't forgive people because they deserve it, I told her later that night, when we were washing the dishes together. She was drying them with a towel, moving slowly, deliberately. You forgive them because you deserve peace. She nodded. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be the person you thought I was. I laughed. Don't do that, I said. Just be yourself. But maybe a slightly nicer version. She laughed too. A real, genuine laugh, the kind that makes your whole face light up. The kind I never thought I'd hear from her. 5 years of silence, 3 months in a hospital, 2 years living under the same roof. And it all came down to one moment on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in a sterile hospital room when she asked me why I was there, and I told her the truth. Because you're family, even when you don't act like it. I still wear the necklace, every single day. The tiny gold heart is tarnished now, a bit scratched from all the years. But I never take it off. Because every time I touch it, I remember the day Patricia finally said my name, and I remember that I stayed. Not because I was strong, not because I was good, because I was stubborn, because I refused to let her hate win, because I believed that somewhere underneath all that bitterness and cruelty and silence was a woman who was just afraid of being alone, and I was right. She wasn't the monster I thought she was. She was just broken. And sometimes, broken people need someone to hold their hand while they put themselves back together. Sometimes, they need someone who won't walk away. That someone was me. Now, Patricia and I have coffee together every Sunday morning. We sit on my porch, wrapped in thick blankets, watching the sun.